Hi everybody, sorry I'm late. I was struggling to actually type a bolster, which is ridiculous, isn't it? So that is how pickled my brain is today. That's half term for you, I suppose. So we're going to be doing a bolster cushion. So there's a couple of different techniques in here which makes it a nice project. So you might not particularly want to do the bolster cushion, but you might like the idea of either doing a zip, just getting a bit of practice in doing a zip, or adding inserted piping or trim or something like that. So I'm going to be using the ready-made pre-covered piping, which is called inserted piping. Hi everybody, everyone's starting to pile in, probably because I'm late. It's terrible, isn't it? Or you might just want to have a bit of a refresher on a zip. So I'm going to be using a continuous zip tonight rather than a sort of standard pre-made zip, which I do like using, but I'm definitely becoming a fan of these. So I'm going to show you how to make, how to insert an inserted zip. This isn't the easiest project to insert one into, but it's quite nice because at least you can get an idea of how it goes in, even in the most like trickiest of circumstances. And then we're going to be using some of the knowledge, if you've done either the draft excluder or the doorstop, of adding a circle on, you will be fairly kind of au fait with how to do this, and obviously with the added detail of having piping. So the first thing I'm going to do is just talk about measuring the cushion pad. Just bear with me, my tripody thing is a bit stiff, so hopefully it will play ball. If it's a bit of roughing and toughing, then please excuse me. So I've just used for my insert a normal standard cushion pad, and all I've done is, it was one that it's in better days, it was a bit limp and a bit flat, so instead of using it as a square cushion, I've rolled it up. And what I'll do is I'll put some pictures on Facebook. I've put some on my Instagram stories this week of how to do that. So rather than actually buying like a specific bolster cushion, I've just used an old cushion that probably really wouldn't have been good for anything other than just stuffing really. So I've just used that. So I've got a standard 16-inch cushion pad, which is what I've made my dimensions on. So I will show you that now. So I'll flip you around. Hopefully, like I said, it's just a bit, I'm not very good with this, it's a bit stiff. So depending on what you want to make, some people might want to make bigger or longer versions of these. To get the dimensions for my fabric, all I've done is taken a couple of measurements, and I've measured around the circumference of my bolster cushion. So it's about 51 centimetres, and the seam allowance we're going to use for the zipper is 1.5 centimetres. So I've cut my fabric at 55 centimetres. So it allows 51 plus 1.5 plus 1.5 my seam allowance. And then I've measured the length of my cushion, which is about 43 centimetres. Now the seam allowance is slightly smaller for the ends of the cushions, it's just 1 centimetre, and that's sort of dictated by the piping. So the piece of fabric I'm starting with is 45 centimetres long by 55 centimetres wide. So as you can see, I've tried a different couple of colours of piping on this. I'm gonna go for pink, I've decided. So I'm gonna change that later on this week, probably not tonight. So that is the base that I'm starting with. Pattern direction is personal preference really. I don't think it matters too much. It depends, I suppose, where you're going to put that. So I've got my rectangle of fabric pre-cut, and then you will also need some extra fabric for the ends of your cushion. So the first thing we're going to do is create a tube, and this is where we're going to put our zip in. So we want to just have temporary stitches. So we want them to be nice and loose stitches. And so when I turn my machine on, what I want to do is just change the sort of standard settings. So rather than being 2.5 millimetres, it's just quite small, I want to change them up to as big as my machine will go, which is 5 millimetres. I'm just going to see if I can move you a bit closer and not under my chin so much. So we're just going to use a standard foot for this first little bit. And I'm just going to do a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So as soon as I make those stitches bigger, then I want to avoid doing any reverse stitching, any securing, because these are sort of temporary stitches. And I'm going to do 1.5 centimetre seam allowance and just go straight into it. So no reversing. So I'm going to turn my machine off for 2 reasons. The next time I use it, I'm going to be popping my presser on, so I want it turned off anyway. And then I'm also going to be using a smaller stitch size. So let me just, it's just not playing ball. This I've bent it in such a way that I don't seem to be able to get it back. So let's see if I can just zip my ironing board over instead. And you can see it that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to press that seam open and I'm going to start getting my zip in place. Now it's tricky because it's a tube. If you were doing a square or a rectangle cushion, it wouldn't be as tricky as this because you could do this seam with 2 flat pieces. So I am making life a little bit harder work for myself, but I definitely think the results are worth it. So I'm just smoothing out that seam. And I'm going to take my continuous zip. So all I've done on the zip, just to get it started, is cut the zip at a little bit of an angle like this. Now I'm going to slide my zipper down. Now obviously there's the open side and the closed side of the zip. So when you zip it down it'll close, and when you zip it up it will open. So I'm just going to slide that on like that. And slide this in here. Hopefully it will do just as quick as when I've just been practicing. I might need to start at the other end now, I think. So I'm just going to split it fractionally, probably about 1 inch or so, and put a little snip in like that. This is the thing that was making me nervous. Like if I can't do that, if this doesn't go right, doesn't go to plan, then it'll all go to pot. But hopefully it will prove not so difficult. Oh, come on. I'm just going to slide my zip. There we go. So it sort of looks like it's pulling it open there. And I'm just going to pull that along so that it's further than the length of my cushion. So the zip I'm using is probably about 1/2 metre, but the cushion itself is 45 centimetres. So what I want to do is I want to take this zip and I want to lay it on the cushion, and I'm just going to cut a little bit extra off that zipper tape. So my zip is now bigger than the cushion itself. So I'm going to split it open. Hoping you can see all this. Let's change the angle slightly. And I'm going to lay the zip right sides down. So I'm making sure that my zip goes both off each side of the cushion. And I'm lining the teeth up with the open seam of my cushion. So it's a bit tricky because you don't want to pin the ironing board or the back of the cushion. So I'm just pinning through the top layer of the cushion cover, but not the back side and the zipper tape itself. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to go all the way down, just lining up those teeth with the seam itself. So if you put your hand in that tube, it should hopefully just stop you grabbing that other side of the cushion or the ironing board. A good trick, if you can, is to fit like a magazine or something like that inside it, so that when you pin through, there's no chance of you getting the other side of the fabric, because the magazine sort of stops it. So let's zip it down a little bit more. But obviously we don't want it to go off the edge. It's that kind of balance. So the more zipper tape you can spare, the better at this. And then I'm going to zip the zip back up. So once all that side is in place, I'm going to zip my zip. And again, when I get to the end, I'm just being super careful that I don't zip the zip pull straight off after getting it on. And I'm going to put a couple of pins on the other side just to keep that in place. So ideally, I would always recommend tacking your zip into place once you've done it. I'm going to see if I can get away with not doing that tonight, just for speed and because it is such a straightforward zip. But I would always recommend just tacking that into place. So I'm going to bring my machine back. Before I switch it on, I want to switch over to my zipper foot. So can't hear. Oh, sorry guys, can't hear you when you're not facing the camera. I will try and speak up when I'm a little bit further away. So what I'm going to do is pop my zipper foot on. So depending on your machine, your zipper foot will look slightly different, but they all are kind of similar. So this zipper foot on the Brother is very much like a Janome one. You can sew on either side of the zipper foot. Some of them you can just sew on one side, but a lot of them will look like a little bit like a capital T. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to release my normal presser foot, and again, lots of machines look fairly similar to this. So at the back of the foot here, there is a little black button, and you can sort of squeeze that and your regular foot will drop off. So there's a little bar on your presser foot which sits on the machine. Now on your zipper foot, there's a bar in the middle, so it either sits to the left or to the right of your presser foot. So I'll show you in a minute when we put that on which side you want to go to depending on which side of the zip you're sewing. So there's a little groove in the foot, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that from there, but it's basically like a little claw, and that claw sort of sits on that bar, but you can't sit it centrally. It's either to the left or to the right. So what we're going to do is kind of work down the zip. So I'm just going to pull that tab up so it's sort of not in my way. I'm going to come down the left hand side of the zip first. So if I'm sewing the left hand side of the zip, then I need my presser foot clipped on to the right hand side. So basically the actual shaft of the machine is sitting on the zipper teeth, and this bit of the presser foot here is going down the side. So what this bit here does actually is pushes up against the zipper teeth. So I'm going to lower my presser foot down just really, really gently until it's in the right position. And it clips on like that. Some people's might be snap-on, so you might have to push them up, but for these ones, it's easy to push down. So I'm just going to get myself in position, and I'm just going to move that first pin so I can see it. Like I said, it's much better really if you tack into place, but for this, because it's quite straightforward, I'm going to just go for it with pins. So as I lower my presser foot down, the presser foot itself is sat on the zipper teeth. So this bit here that's connected to the machine is sat on the teeth itself, and this bit of the presser foot is sort of lining up here. It's pushing up, this edge is pushing up with those teeth, and if you sort of feel it with your fingernails, you can feel that groove. It's hard to explain on camera. And then I'm just going to get these threads out of the way. So as the needle sinks down into the fabric, it's basically going to be sitting really nice and close to this zip, and you want it really quite close. So this is permanent stitching, so I'm going to do 3 stitches forwards and then 3 stitches back. And I'm just focusing on the edge of my presser foot here lining up with that seam as a nice sort of guide to keep it all level, so my top stitching is neat as possible. So the reason sewing a tube isn't so easy is obviously because of this. You've got to almost kind of bury your way into it. So just make sure you can see it and keep moving that fabric out of the way. And then I'm getting to my pin. And I'm just going to move that out of the way, which is much easier if you have tacked this into place. I'm just keeping my eyes focused on this edge of the presser foot being lined up with my seam line. And this line is pushing up to those zipper teeth. So I'm going to look a bit further and then peep and take my pin out. But like I said, it's definitely easier if you tack first. And just keeping that fabric moving. All the way until I've got to the end. And then when I get to the end, I want to repeat that 3 stitches backwards and 3 stitches forward just to secure things. And just push my fabric off the end. Let's move that before I lose it. So you can do 2 things for the other side. You can either start from the end you just finished at, or if you want to start from the beginning again, if you've got a regular zipper and you negotiate the head, you just need to swap over. But of course I can just flip straight over and repeat the same process. I'm going to 3 stitches forward and 3 stitches backwards. Now my pins are definitely less necessary on this side because I've already secured my zipping with those stitches, so I'm going to take them out a little bit earlier. And just keep on focusing on this line being in line with my seam, just for top stitching and being nice and neat and equal. Keep getting a bit close with these pins. Not something I would recommend if I was doing a lesson, I've got to say. Just keep on moving that fabric along, zipping the pins out. So when I take these pins out, and obviously my fingers are very near to that needle, what I'm always making sure is my foot is well away from the pedal. Last pin. And again, I'm going to finish those 3 stitches into reverse and 3 stitches forwards again. And just get all of my fabric out. So I'm going to leave that presser foot on because we're going to be doing quite a bit with the zipper foot today. So we're going to also do the piping with that. So I'm going to just open my zip up and just check that it's working, that it's functional before I do anything else. So I'm just going to undo those basting stitches with my own picker. Now just be really careful here that you don't slice through your fabric. Obviously your stitches are bigger, so they will come out much easier. You can see them almost like splaying there. Oh no, battery's low. I have to plug in a minute. But you don't want to rip or kind of do any damage to the fabric on either side of your seam now. So I'm just going to check everything's working all right before we carry on, which is what we hope. So the idea with a zip like this is called a centered zip. So the zip is in the center of your stitches, and what you want is you want to be able to see, you can see the zip, it's not desirable, but you are going to be able to see it, but you don't want to be able to see it too much, which is why basting or putting those temporary really loose stitches in the middle of your seam will help to keep your seams kind of almost like overlapping your zipper tape, and then not too much is coming through. So I'm just going to take the rest of my basting stitches out. And then we'll check that it works before we move on. you always, when you're doing a zip, I think you always forget a little bit to sort of breathe as you're putting it in, holding your breath, and then you don't quite relax until you've pulled that zip up and down and made sure that everything is working as it should. I was pulling these little bits of thread out just in case any of them get stuck in the zip and just affects it working. Like that. So let's give it a bit of a trim. I'm just going to check that that zip works, and it does. I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put some securing stitches at the beginning and the end. They might not necessarily stay at the beginning and at the end, because depending on your cushion pad, you might need to shorten your tube, but you can always repeat this step if you do need to make your tube any shorter. So what I'm going to do is very briefly ping off my zip foot, so squeeze that lever and just put my regular foot back on. So just for this step, and I'm going to put my machine on zigzag setting. So my zigzag is number 4, I think it is. Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. Number 4. And I want quite a narrow zigzag, so I don't want it too wide, but I want them very, very close together. So I'm just going to reduce that number slightly, probably to about 3. So it's about 3 millimeters wide. But how close they are together, the length, I'm going to bring that right down to about 1. And what I'm going to do, I'll do the bottom of the zip first. So let's just make sure that back of the fabric. So about 1 centimetre away from this edge, I want to do some zigzag stitching, so they really just create a bridge, because obviously at the moment there is no stopper in this zip, there just isn't one there. So I'm going to start here around about where my top stitches are, so the stitches that I've just done. Let's see if I can get this camera any closer. I think I can. And it should be quite intense stitching. I'm going to stitch right over my zip. I'm going to stop when I get to the stitches on this side of the zip, and then I'm going to go into reverse. And I'm going to do that again. So you could repeat that as many times as you wanted. I'll just show you the kind of effect that you want to get. So you want to basically create a bit of a stopper there. So what you'll find is this line will probably be roughly around your seam allowance line. So whether it's visible or not is up to you. You might want to do more, but all you want to do is create something that stops your zip getting pulled down. Because obviously the last thing you want to do is make your beautiful cushion and then your zipper just whizzes right off the edge. Now it's harder on this end because your zipper tape is obviously apart. So you could either do a little hand stitch and hand stitch those into place, or put a pin or a safety pin into place. I'm just going to put a pin in, but I would normally, if I had a little bit more time, probably just do a little bit of a hand stitch there into place and just keep those edges together. But the idea is the same. So your hands are going to need to be a little bit close to the machine, but just keep them nice and safe. So again, even when you take that pin out, you've got something there at the other end of the zip that is just going to stop that from pinging straight off the edge. So I've got the zip in now, and now we want to put the end of the cushion on, so the circular on. So my maths isn't the best, it's not awful, but I did struggle a little bit when I was trying to do this. So I was trying to do pi, which in all honesty is something I've not done for, well, a long time, since I was at high school. So ideally what you do is take the circumference of your cushion and you could either put it into the little calculator on Google, or you can do some pi to work out the radius of your circle. So I sort of worked out that the radius of my circle should be about 17 centimetres. The diameter, sorry, should be about 17 centimetres. However, it was a little bit small, so I added seam allowance and I added an extra centimetre, so it was 18 centimetres and it was fine. So I don't know why exactly that was, but it seemed to work. So the easiest way to do that is to get a sort of square of fabric and just fold it into quarters. So you're still doing that circle motion, but you're just doing a quarter of the work. So taking that 9 centimetres, I'm just going to do a few marks with my air erasable pen. Like that. And then just cut that like that, so that I then get my circular base. I'm sure there is some mathematicians out there that will be like despairing at this and know exactly how to do this, but I didn't have very much success with my first one, and I'm sure there should be some mathematical solution to this, but I don't think I'm very capable of doing that. So I've got my inserted cord. It takes about just over a metre, which is annoying because it would have been nice for it to fit in a metre, but it doesn't, depending on the width of your cushion, but mine just slightly don't fit. So what I'm going to do on one end is I'm just going to unpick some of my stitching. So Joy's asking, how do you work out the measurement? So ideally, the measurement for your circle is if you take the circumference of your cushion, so the circumference of the bolster, and then you want to do a pi mathematics. So to work out the radius, you need to do something with the circumference with pi. I don't know what it is, but anyway, I wasn't very good at that. But my circumference ended up, and my diameter ended up being 18 across and all the way around. So if you start off with a rectangle same as mine, you'll need a circle that's got an 18 centimetre diameter. But how exactly the pi works, I'm not very good at that. So I'm just unpicking the end of my bias binding that's covering my piping cord, and I'm taking it back about 2 or 3 centimetres like that, and then what I want to do is peel this back, and I want to actually chop out and remove that excess piping there. And then on this end here, I'm going to fold back just a tiny little lip, probably about 0.5 centimetre. So you could either press that with an iron, or I'm just going to press it with finger pressure like that, and that just creates kind of a neatened end. And I'm going to start with this end. I'm not going to start at the end. I'm going to start a little bit further down, and I'm just going to put a pin in here like that. And I'm putting the open ends of the piping to the raw edge of the fabric. So the piping end is kind of inside the fabric, which obviously then when you turn it out, you'll get that lovely nice piped edge. So we're back onto our zipper foot. So I'm pinging it off and back on again. So I want to sew on the right hand side of my piping cord, so I'll need to put it on the left hand side of my presser foot. And because at the moment, just as I'm attaching this to this, it's temporary stitches. If when I've actually sewn the whole cushion together, you can see some of these stitches now, I'm just going to put my larger stitches on, some nice big loose stitches, and I'm just going to place. So this bit of the presser foot, so the edges that were kind of pushing towards the zipper teeth, they're actually going to push against the piping cord itself. Oh, I did this when I was doing my practice earlier. My machine automatically, it's the one little niggle I've got against brother, always starts in this position. I want to start in that position, so I'll just adjust that. And I'm just going to go little by little around my circle and just keep readjusting myself. So you could pin all this into place. I'm terrible. I don't do a whole lot of pinning. If I can save myself a little bit of time, I do. But I would probably advise putting a few pins in or quilting clips or something just to keep it in place. And then your fingers are nice and safe. Not like me, being a bit of a lazy sewer. I'm just bending it round. So with that bias, it will just kind of manoeuvre itself nicely. It will stretch. Like that. And keep going around your circle. So when I get back to the beginning, or almost, what I want to do is sort of measure. So I might just do a few more stitches. But what I want to do is I want to put my piping cord so that it meets the piping where I've chopped off the piping cord. So it's about there. And I'm going to remove here. And I actually want to tuck the end of my piping cord into sort of the beginning like that. And just press it over the top. So I think I probably still need to take another couple of millimetres off there. So in theory, what you want to happen is that the piping cord goes all the way around and it sort of meets the beginning. So not there's excess and you get a lump, or there's not quite enough and you get kind of an area where there isn't any cord. So basically that tucks into there and those ends should marry up, and that will just stop any kind of lumps or any kind of uneven join. And I'm just going to go right over there until we get back to the beginning. So you get a nice, neat join there. So I've got that fold, I've not got any raw edges, but I've not got kind of like piping cord crisscrossing over each other or being too bulky. This is quite slim, is this piping cord, so it's not too much of a problem. But if you've got a thick piping cord, if you've got big thick rope crossing over, then you'll get a real lump in that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce my stitch size for the next step before I forget. And I'm going to do a tiny bit of ironing just to kind of show you how you can make it as easy as possible to match up your tube with your ends. So I'm just going to take that end that I've just done, pop this out like that. And take my iron and I'm going to fold this in half. So I'm just kind of quartering my circle. So I'm going to use these creases at the side as kind of my gauge, and I'm going to fold it in half again. So I'll bring those creases together and then iron again. So if you look at that, I've got 4 markers. Now, if you're struggling or if you've got a fabric that doesn't particularly like being ironed, like the linens and things like that, I'm just going to put a little marker with my trick marker here. And then if those creases come out, I've got a nice clear indicator there. Oops, lost my lid. And I'm going to do the same here. So if I grab the zip and stretch it out and iron that halfway marker. And then if I bring the crease there that I've just made to the zip, like that. And then iron here. And here. Then I've got, just made an extra crease that I didn't want. Then I've got my quarter markers here and here. So I'll turn the tube the wrong way out. So I'm going to be putting right sides together. So I've got 4 sections here and I've got 4 sections here. And I'm just marrying those up. So I'm going to put one of the creases there and there. just matching those raw edges up. So I've probably got a couple of pins in there because I've got the zip in place. And then this crease and this crease. So the reason for putting all these creases in and doing it kind of in these chunks and these sections is that you've got less kind of fabric to negotiate like this. It's just taking that pressure off. So if anybody did the draft excluder or the door stop, then you'll kind of get, or if you've ever done a memory bear or something like that, you'll kind of get why I'm doing this. I'm just hoping it's all... I've done my circle, I've done the pie method right and got the right measurement. So I'm going to be basically attaching this piece to that piece there. So I'll just move my iron for a minute. Come on back. See if I can just get you a little bit closer. So nice tight stitches this time, normal stitch settings. So my normal stitch settings are 2.5, and I'm just going to start anywhere on your circles. It doesn't matter where you start particularly, but I'm following the same sort of principles as what I was doing when I was just tacking the piping cord on. So I'm ideally pushing this part of the presser foot up with the side of the piping cord, and I'm just going all the way around that circumference. I'm just moving that excess. So what I tend to do if I'm doing something like this, if I'm putting a round on, is put the small circular base on the bed of the sewing machine and have the tube or the bigger amount of fabric where I can see it, so that I can move it out of the way so I'm not going to get any tucks or creases. And I'm just going to, oops, getting stuck, move that around. And just keep working around my circle, straight over the zip. And just keep moving that sort of fabric round. I'm almost back at the beginning now. So what I'm going to do is go over my original stitches and then do my reverse stitching and then do my forward stitches like that. And we'll take those pins out. So now I've got those securing stitches, I've also got the seam itself, so I can cut off any excess tape that might kind of cause any bulk in my cushion. And you can see, a bit thready, I've got that lovely piping on the outside. So if you can see any of your original stitches like that, what you might want to do is either unpick those basting stitches out, or try and stitch a little bit closer. I think that's close enough. Obviously I need to tidy up my threaded edges, but I'm quite happy with that piping. And the next job is to do the exact same thing on the other side. Now what I would recommend before you sew the other end on is just to unzip your zip a little bit like that, and I'm going to repeat the exact same process. So grab my ironing board back. Just slightly conscious of my battery going. I'm trying to think where my phone charger is. I'm sure it was about. Maybe not. Oh, it is. And then I'm going to fold my circle in half. So find those halfway marks and quarter marks. Just makes that a little bit easier just to marry everything up. And then again, like that. If anyone's done any sort of jersey work or hoodies and things like that, you will know the power of the quartering for your neckbands and putting your hoods on and cuffs and waistbands and things like that. It's something that's definitely a useful little trick. So again, I'm just going to start to match all those divisions up. Now, we'll probably recommend, if you've got a seam on your piping there, you join, I would not recommend putting it with your zip, just because of bulk. So just rotate it on so you've not got two bit bulky elements together. So right sides together again, everything the same, just repeating what you did with the other side. Just quarter to quarter. Quarter to quarter. I've become a little bit obsessed with scatter cushions since last week. So I'm hoping that this cushion will sort of tie in all of the random cushions that I've been doing, because I've not really been thinking about what goes together. I've just been picking fabric that I like, which isn't really the best idea. So hopefully this new fabric that's coming today will tie everything together and kind of harmonise everything. So here's hoping. Because they're just really addictive, just look really pretty. Seems so much prettier than a square cushion. Oh, what are we doing here? Okay, so same principle, circles going down, and it's the tube that I'm kind of managing. So just making sure that's in the right area. So I'm just stopping every so often when I feel like I need to and just arranging this top fabric here. Now, if you had it the other way around, all of this here will be on the bed of the sewing machine. You won't be able to see what was going on, and there is the potential that you'll get some creases and you'll sew some puckers into your fabric. Almost back at the beginning, and just 3 stitches in reverse and 3 stitches forwards, and that is my machine work done. Zip my pins out, and again just take off that excess zip like that. Zip's not going anywhere. And just turn the whole thing inside out. So I've then got myself my cushion. Let's take out the cushion from my other pad. I was thinking about this cushion, I think it was yesterday, because I still technically owe my mum a yoga bag from her birthday in September, but it is coming up to Mother's Day. So what I thought is that this would be a really nice kind of basis to make a lovely yoga mat bag for. Just maybe adding a strap in the side or a little patch pocket for your phone. But this kind of idea, but longer, would be good. So I'll show you my very scratty cushions. Please apologise. Please take my apologies on this. So this is just a normal cushion. Like I said, it's lost all life, and all I've done is sort of rolled it into like a sausage roll and done some very basic stitching just to hold it together in a sausage shape. So I do believe you can buy bolster cushions, but I haven't. I've just used just a dodgy old cushion that I've had, and I'm just going to put my pad in there and zip it up, and that is, she says, my bolster cushion. So it probably needs a bit of plumping and a bit of fitting to this actual cushion pad, but there is a nice nice cylindrical bolster cushion to add to my little collection of cushions. Let's just wing you round back to me. Sorry, this is the bit where you always end up right in my face, or I end up in your face. So I've got the bolster cushion, so hopefully it gives you a bit of confidence and an idea of how to make the most of your zipper foot. So not only just putting zips in, but the continuous zips are really easy and they're nice because they take that pressure out of working with a specific size zip, and obviously also putting your inserted piping in, which is really, really easy and just adds a nice flash of colour. Obviously you can make a bolster and you don't have to have the piping on, or you could put pom-poms in, but I think it's just a nice little splash of colour. So I hope you all like that tutorial. Next week we are doing bunny bags, so getting into Easter, and then March is probably going to be a full-on Easter fair. So hopefully you like these, and I can't wait to see you tag me in them. I'm still waiting from last week for gathered cushions, so yeah, get making, and I hope you've enjoyed just some of those techniques, whether you use them in this project or another one. I hope they have been helpful. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next week.